To say that philosophy has made advancements over the years is a lot like saying arithmetic has made advancements over the years. Unfortunately, 1 plus 1 will continue to equal 2, no matter how much technology changes over the span of time. Way back when, it might have been just our fingers counting out 1 plus 1 equals 2. It might have then evolved into the abacus. It might have then evolved into some sort of primitive computer, some sort of calculator, and thus into the more complex computers that we have today, the supercomputers that we have today, and whatever future technology that you wish to fathom for the future. But the principles, indeed the functions, the theory that all of these employ remain the same. It always will remain the same. So too with logic. So too with dialectic. To say that we need to be brought up to speed in terms of philosophy is not true at all. What we would need to be brought up to speed with, perhaps, is the contemporary school of thought and the underlying assumptions, since those can change and be repackaged many different ways over the years. Even then, we can generally see different schools of thought that have existed through time continue to be the same schools of thought, but with a different label. Postmodernism, for example, I would argue is just a repackaging of the positivist movement. And this absurdist idea is just a similar repackaging. To be brought up to speed in anything that is necessary in terms to speak philosophy would be just those repackaging of whatever school of thought that you might want to be a part of. But the act of philosophy itself, reasoning, coming to truths, this will always remain the same. Indeed, even the absurdist posture that people like Azronach represent exist under a pretext of assumptions that can be questioned in of themselves and can be found to be reasonable or unreasonable or irrational. Ill-reasonable, is that a word? I hope so. At any rate, it is finding the truth of these terms, it is and the truth of these claims, these first premises, that we get the notion of philosophy and the notion of dialectic, and this doesn't change. The sense that you and I have of what is logical, and the recognition that we have when we see things staring at in our face that are absurd, remain the same for us as it did for people in the past. Thousands of years ago, even before Socrates' time. Indeed, to the time of the dawn of man, people have been able to recognize and distinguish between that which is rational and that which feels absurd. Because that's really what it all comes down to, is the feeling. And your recognition of such is part of your human nature. It's something that you have. It's something that allows you to be the rational human being that you present yourself to be. Science, like philosophy, does not progress in a linear, accumulating line of knowledge. Indeed, if you agree with Thomas Kuhn, you would know that even science doesn't do that. Science works in paradigm shifts. And indeed, that kind of reasoning, because that has to happen because the scientific method works on some assumptions that cannot be outrightly proven in of themselves. They can work in the dark for a very long time around some error that they've accepted as truth. So too will you see this with bad schools of philosophical thought, like the positivist movement. They'll come up with something and then they'll repackage it because people from more classical schools of thought will punch holes into it until it cannot support itself anymore. Of course, if you just repackage a system of thought, the underlying issues, the underlying problems remain the same. And the problems that we see in logical positivism are very much the same as the ones that we can apply to postmodernism and the absurdist posture that is represented here on YouTube. It's a red flag for ideology, not philosophy, when you hear people say that you need to be brought up to speed with the modern way of thinking about the world. Because philosophy, for what it really is, at its very core, is about understanding the truth of any claim. And that remains the same. And there is no such advancement in philosophy, just like there's no such advancement in arithmetic.